Eiyuden Chronicle's 100 Heroes attempts to be what it should not be, a kickstarted spiritual successor to the Suikoden series. Suikoden was well ahead of its time in terms of depth, quality, and narrative. The animations and the relationships that you formed with each and every individual you acquired in your adventure was nothing short of perfection. They really don't make them like they used to, when developers had so much at their disposal and so much time to really iron out all of their issues and create memories for decades to come. Starting with the issues, the localization, which for a lot of games these days have deteriorated to the point where it just feels like the ones translating it are becoming heavily unqualified for this job, which many of us want done seriously and professionally, not by people that add a completely unnecessary dialogue that is only detracting from the overall experience. Especially when nothing is even being said at that specific moment in time, they still feel it appropriate to add in some head-turning dialogue that will ruin the overall story or destroy your vision for that specific character forever. I do believe that this game relies heavily on your nostalgia for the Suikoden series, but many of the people who funded it are without a doubt not children, but rather in their 30s and 40s or even older, so having the entire game sound like it's being spoken through an infant with dialogue like,
"Or did I break your little head in with my big words?"
I need to release the geyser of feelings.
That is a release a geyser, not a geezer. Do you not know basic English? And cringeworthy conversations continues to ruin the character and subsequently the entire story or any form of bonding unless you can understand Spanish or Japanese subtitles, because the English translation is absolutely terrible. The whole game feels like a novel. It focuses on the story, the characters, and the cutscenes that do take up the majority of the game. I shouldn't even have to mention the terrible minigames like fishing.
Yep. Perfect catch.
Or more specifically, the very drawn-out war battles, which are mostly 99% cutscenes, 1% putting your units into each square, and 0% strategy. They did a good job mixing the 2D sprites into a 3D scene without feeling out of place, but I can't say that the soundtrack or anything else really drew in my attention. There were definitely some sections that they nailed character personalities well, but because of the terrible voice acting for English and the translation, I just could not enjoy the majority of this experience because I can understand some lines of Japanese where I knew that they said something completely different or nothing at all. Is it a deal breaker for most? Yes, but it's actually still relatively fine in many places, but in a few sections it becomes quite sporadic. Keep in mind that this is only for the English version, and the other languages did a fantastic job with their translations without all of this injection. You will be motivated to explore, but you'll quickly realize that there's little motivation for you as a player to go about recruiting everyone because they all seem so isolated from everything. When they say one line of text to the main characters at random intervals, giving the impression that they are contributing when all they are doing is saying one line of text without any form of acknowledgement. The actual physical gameplay isn't particularly distinctive. It tries too hard to be Suikoden that it fails to deliver on any of the other elements, all of which are very boring and lack challenge or even enthusiasm. The actual battle system is based on the same methods used in Suikoden, with placements and supports. However, 90% of the time it's autoplay, while also forcing new and old characters that you probably didn't care to have in your party up until that point, forcing you to change at least one or more of the core team that you had come to appreciate over time. Even if they did allow you to put 3 of them on backup support, it didn't really matter, while also requiring you to face specific bosses and their gimmick elements in order to deal with them effectively, such as dealing massive quantities of damage and stunning them in the process. You don't have much control aside from running around looking for new characters to recruit to your ruined castle, which requires resources to upgrade. And once you've scavenged for these resources, which are scattered over the world, the rewards that you get are unpleasant because it feels like you've just wasted all that time on something pointless that you can't even use. The longer you play through Eiyuden Chronicles, the more you realize about halfway through that while it does definitely fill in for that Suikoden itch, that itch turns into desperate scratching at how poorly they delivered an overall experience that will continue to captivate you throughout, with Leon and Noah being depicted so heavily as Nanami and Ryu from Suikoden that you don't want anything to do with either of them. I'm really not trying to dissuade you from picking up this game. If you're interested in Suikoden, this game is the closest thing to being Suikoden without being a well-maintained successor. There are some in the community that are completely retranslating the English localization for this game, which will undoubtedly improve the overall experience for some players like myself, so long as we choose the Japanese voice actors. Though the rest of the game does still feel slow, boring, unappealing, and detached rather than engaging.